We all have this mental picture of the Cold War, right? This unbreakable, decades-long, icy standoff between two global giants. But what if I told you there was a moment, a time, when that ice didn't just crack, it actually started to melt? Well, let's explore that surprising thaw. For so long, the United States and the Soviet Union were in this seemingly endless stalemate. It was the ultimate silent treatment. So what happens when that finally ends? What happens when the two biggest rivals on the entire planet actually start talking to each other? You have to remember the default setting for the Cold War was just constant tension. It was this incredibly high-stakes rivalry playing out all across the globe. Everything from the space race to proxy wars. The entire world was pretty much permanently on edge, just holding its breath. So yeah, that's the story we all know. But what if for a little while that tension didn't just stabilize? What if it actually started to go down? What if that boiling point really started to cool off? Well, that's exactly what happened in the 1970s. It brought this totally surprising shift. That deep freeze of the Cold War, it began to thaw, and that led to a whole new and really complex phase in the relationship between the superpowers. And this period actually has a name, détente. It's a French word that literally means a loosening. And honestly, that's exactly what it was, a loosening of these incredibly strained relations that had defined the world for a generation. Now, that sounds like a pretty straightforward statement, right? But the implications, wow, they were enormous. I mean, for the first time in decades, it felt like genuine diplomatic progress between the US and the Soviet Union might actually be possible. This whole era of détente, it wasn't just some vague feeling, you know? It wasn't just good vibes. It was solidified by a landmark agreement, a single moment that would completely change the rules of the game. The year was 1975, a truly pivotal year that really marks the absolute peak of this whole détente era. So in Helsinki, you have 35 nations, including, of course, the two rival superpowers, and they all come together to sign what's known as the Helsinki Accords. Now, on the surface, it looked like a declaration to improve relations between the communist bloc and the West, but buried inside, there was something truly revolutionary. For the very first time, a major international agreement between these adversaries explicitly included a clause on human rights. Fundamental freedoms were now officially part of the diplomatic conversation. This was huge. It wasn't just about military de-escalation anymore. It was about values. Okay, so with all this positive momentum, all this talk of diplomacy and values, you'd probably expect a military alliance like NATO to, relax a bit. But that is not what happened. Instead, we start to see this fascinating paradox emerge. I mean, this is the core question, isn't it? If diplomacy is actually working and tensions are easing, why would a defensive military alliance like NATO feel the need to stay on high alert? Why not just embrace the thaw completely? This slide just lays out that contradiction perfectly. On one side, you've got the promise of détente, easing tensions, declarations of human rights. But on the other side, you've got the reality of NATO's posture, remaining strong, remaining cautious. It was this incredible balancing act between hope and, well, realism. And that was NATO's official position. The strategy was super clear. Let's engage in diplomacy. Let's support the easing of tensions. But let's never, ever let our guard down. Why? Because behind all the diplomatic handshakes, NATO saw the Soviet Union continuing to build up its conventional military forces in Eastern Europe. The ideological battle hadn't just stopped. So military strength wasn't seen as a contradiction to peace. It was seen as the very foundation that made that diplomacy possible in the first place. So what does all this mean? Well, it means the era of détente wasn't really about ending the Cold War, but it was absolutely about reshaping it. It created this whole new kind of conflict, one fought not just with military might, but with diplomatic pressure and with arguments over big ideas like human rights. A very, very uneasy peace. So to wrap it all up, the key takeaways are pretty simple. The 70s saw this major thaw in the Cold War. The Helsinki Accords in 1975 were a total game changer, injecting human rights right into the heart of diplomacy. And through it all, alliances like NATO had to navigate this brand new world with a very careful, very cautious strategy. And that leaves us with a fundamental question that's just as relevant today as it was then. What is the true foundation of peace? Is it something that's built on mutual trust and shared values? Or is it simply guaranteed by the strength of those who want to keep it? It's something to think about.